to look at the top 5 features of Diagnostic Manager, and this is really opinion-based, I guess. Everyone has their own way of looking at Diagnostic Manager, and I kind of look at this presentation being focused on 2 different types of audiences, and some of you have already heard me say this also when I do a Getting Started 101 with Diagnostic Manager, and that is there's going to be the audience that is familiar with Diagnostic Manager, but maybe they're not getting the most out of it. They want to just kind of understand what are some of the top areas that I should be looking at within the tool to get the most information from the tool. And then there's going to be the other audience that is perhaps new to this product. They're interested in Diagnostic Manager. Maybe they feel a little bit overwhelmed by what they're seeing just from looking at a demonstration. They want to, again, same thing, know a little bit about where they should go to hit the ground running with using the tool as well. So I'm hoping that this presentation will kind of bring you to those areas that mean the most within the product. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and get things going. First of all, with Diagnostic Manager, I always introduce it as a tool that is more than just a quote-unquote symptom-based monitoring type tool. And what I mean by that is with symptom-based monitoring tools or high-level APM type monitoring, they will give you the green, yellow, red status, telling you that, hey, we have a problem over here with CPU or disk activity or memory utilization, but they don't really tell you enough about why is that happening? What's going on here? What's going on here that's causing this issue? And with Diagnostic Manager, it is a tool that's been around now for over 2 decades, and we've evolved it to answer those questions. As the name implies, Diagnostic Manager will provide you not just that alerting of, the green, yellow, red status, but also an understanding or a drill down capability into why that kind of activity is happening. Is it related to certain sessions? Is it related to certain applications? Is it related to certain workload happening? Is it related to certain SQL agent jobs? Is it related to something that's going on with virtualization where, allocation of resources has changed and something affects the memory allocation from the host to the VM to the operating system to SQL Server? That's all very relevant when we're looking at, monitoring of a SQL instance. So this tool gives you that information, but now we've even taken it a step further by providing you recommendations on how to actually fix issues. So that is kind of just a high-level introduction to what Diagnostic Manager is all about. Now today, the top 5 features that I plan to cover, and we all have our opinions of what is the most beneficial features of the product, but I'm going to touch on query monitoring, prescriptive analytics, which is where you get those recommendations, query tuner, which is part of SQL Diagnostic Manager Pro, because a lot of our customers, I've noticed that some of them, they go the route that's focused on looking at the core architecture of Diagnostic Manager, but they may not know that there's also some other add-ons that they can get from SQL Workload Analysis and SQL Query Tuner. So I want to touch on that just a little bit and show you some of the benefits of that. Then the alert actions and responses for notifications, automation, mitigation, resolutions, historical reporting, just understanding what reports can polish up some of the data that we're gathering. And if you're interested, just kind of a bonus point, I know it's the top 5 features, but the bonus would be just showing you the new web interface as well. It's streamlined, lightweight. It gives you a read-only view to be able to look at data from a browser wherever you are in the office. And also it is mobile compatible, so if you want, you could VPN from your phone and then pull up a browser and look at different alerts that are happening as well. So those are the areas that I plan to touch on today as part of the agenda. Before I move forward, though, I want to just touch on the architecture of this tool for anyone that's new. And I know some of you all are customers, so you don't really need me to sit here for 10 minutes talking about the architecture. But there are certain people that are new to this product, and I just want to be very quick and explain how the architecture works. It is a typical 3-tier architecture. It takes about 5 minutes to install this product. And by the way, you can go out to www.idera.com, go to the product drop-down, go to SQL Diagnostic Manager for SQL Server, click the free trial button, enter some basic information, and immediately download the software with a trial license embedded in the software and start using it right away without having to wait for us to contact you or anything like that. So if this product is compelling to any of you that are new to the product, great. Then you can go out there and get the software right away and start using it and trying it and doing your own proof of concept. But it is very simple to install the product. And the reason it's so simple is that nothing gets installed on your actual SQL instances. So there's no agents, there's no extraneous stored procedures. We don't create any extra databases on the SQL instance. Everything we're doing from a data collection perspective is happening from this SQL DM collection service. We call it SQL DM for short. SQL Diagnostic Manager, we just keep it short. SQL DM collection service. That collection service will reach out and gather data from various dynamic management views, sysperf info, exec sessions, and sys processes combined for the session snapshot. Very similar to what you see with SP-Who2, but we get a little bit more data going with those functions, for example. Extended events for query data or query store if you want to use query store for query collection as well. But anyway, the collection service will gather this data, hand it off to the management service here in the middle of the screen. And the management service, its responsibility is to perform any alert actions. Now, alert actions can be as simple as emailing you to let you know about the problem, notifications, or it might be automation, resolutions, mitigation type activities like running SQL scripts, running SQL jobs for that matter, running PowerShell commands. It could be, integrating data with other third-party systems via SNMP Trap. It could be integrating via, our SCOM integration provider or ServiceNow. We do provide support for that as well. So there's a whole bunch of different alert actions that you can configure. And I'm going to show you that here in a minute, how easy it is to set that up. But the management service performs that activity, and then the management service writes the data to the backend repository database. It's a SQL database called the SQL DM repository database. So that's where your data is going to be stored, and you can expect that repository to grow about 1.5 to 3 gigabytes per monitored instance per year with the out-of-box settings. And of course, you can change the data retention settings to hold on to more data or less data, or set up polling to be more frequent or less frequent. We have some customers that will go in and configure their polling where it's, every 10 minutes on a dev instance. And out of the box, the polling is every 6 minutes by default, but maybe for this one prod instance, you're more concerned about it, so you set the polling to be every 3 minutes. And the thinking behind that, that's kind of a best practice thing for me, is that if you set it to 3 minutes, then if you had to go in and analyze your history browser data over the last 10 minutes, you'll have 3 snapshots versus 1 snapshot. So I always adjust it to be 3 minutes for those more critical instances. But anyway, the management service is what's responsible for writing that data to the backend repository. On the left-hand side, you can see the .NET client. That's the primary way we work with the tool. And there's the optional web interface. We're going to be looking at both of these. Like I said, I have the bonus web interface I'm going to show you, which is a read-only interface. It's secure, fully authenticated, and all of that. So you'll be able to go in and look at, your alerts or resource utilization, things like that through that web interface, through a browser as well. I do feel it's notable to mention that we do support more than just on-prem instances, as you can see at the bottom of the screen. And once again, for all of you joining late, that we do have this PowerPoint presentation available to download along with other marketing materials. So feel free to go over and download that information as well. But we do support both Amazon and Azure. Actually, we support instances in any cloud environment if we're just talking about infrastructure as a service or a VM hosted out in the cloud. As long as we have the ports open, where we can make good communication to the instance, then and of course the credentials to connect to that instance, then we can connect. But we also support Azure database monitoring as well, or Amazon monitoring as well. So As you can see, we do support the cloud, and we have now for many years. One thing notable to mention for any of you that have larger environments, like in this case, I'm advertising 2,000 plus instances, but with Diagnostic Manager, you can have multiple deployments of Diagnostic Manager. And what's nice about the way the product has been configured at this point or developed at this point is now we can have the console connect to multiple deployments of Diagnostic Manager. And basically, you can view all of the instances that are being monitored across multiple deployments in a single console, in a single pane of glass, in a single enterprise type environment in that view, and it's all displayed as one unit instead of having multiple installs. So if you have different segments of your network environment where you have different deployments of Diagnostic Manager, they can all connect to the same console, and you're able to look at everything as if it were the same environment. And by being able to do this, we can support upwards of 2,000 plus instances. We've tested to 2,000 plus instances. You might even be able to go higher than that, but that's what we have tested for. So for any of you that have larger environments, or you're planning to have larger environments, we're able to support you from that perspective as well. And even with a single install, if you just want to stick with a single install, we're able to support upwards of 300 to 400 instances with just a single deployment as well. All right, so with that, I'm going to go over and jump into my environment. Let's bring it up here. And like I said, we're going to touch on those top 5 features that I think are the most beneficial in the product. And the first thing I'm going to do is go to one of my instances here. Let's just pick on one of them here. I will just point out that with the navigation up here at the top, you can see labels for all different types of data here. So if you wanted to jump over to your session details and look at what sessions are active, sleeping, or suspended, you're able to do that. And the reason I'm pointing that out is just that the labels give you a concise understanding of what type of data you're going to see in any of these tabs. But I'm going to stick with those top 5 features today and start off with, like I saw or we saw on the agenda, the query monitoring. So let's start with queries. And here we have the queries tab, and we have about 5 to 6 different ways to display query activity. I'm going to start off though right here under this, see this hierarchy drill down? We're going to go to statement mode first. I like the statement mode because it shows us each individually executed query. And I'm looking at just today's activity, but let's open this up maybe a little bit more. Instead of just looking at today's date, let's go back for the last couple of days just to see what's been going on through the week. So from the 29th to today, we can see down here at the bottom all the queries, and we can see highlighted in yellow or red anything in those values and those cells that is considered higher impact. If you see yellow, that means that that value falls into the top 20% highest impact of all the queries. If you see red, it means top 5% impact. So that can help you drive your attention to where you need to focus on it. And scrolling to the right, you see other relevant information like the user, the application, start time, the end time. You can also filter at the top if you want to focus in on certain applications, databases, specific users, or specific workstations, or specific SQL queries, or specific types of activity like statements, stored procedures, batches. You can select that from the list. You also have these charts here that you can sort performance chart activity based on SQL text, application, database, host system, or user, and based on certain performance metrics like duration, CPU, reads, writes. Like right now we're looking at CPU by database, but maybe I want to look at the duration of the queries by database, like that. I can see where are my longest queries running against. And it looks like my payroll database other than the system database master. Or maybe instead of by database, maybe I look at application per se. And all of this, by the way, we can export out, save it as an image or export to Excel if we want to. But down here at the bottom, I can see my top queries and right-click and show the query text details, including the parameters that were passed. to the query for the given date range, or hit this little details button and it's going to bring up the execution plan to show me every step of the query execution and the costs associated with every step, and where anything was a little bit more expensive with a particular step. Like here we see that there was this table insert. It shows us the cost associated with that as well. And you can, of course, export these details to XML if you want to share with others, or look at the query columns that were relevant to that particular query as well. But this will show us each individually executed query. Now, if I want to, I can switch it up from statement mode to signature mode, and what this will do is take the same queries and consolidate them. So in this case, for the last few days, I've had that one query we were just looking at execute 5 times. But what if it executed, 200 times or 2,000 times? If the query has a lower duration, that looks like maybe it's not as high impact. However, if it executed, 2,000 times over the last couple of days, then we see a little bit more relevance to that query based on the fact that it executed so many times. But this will show us how many times it occurred. You're not going to see a user name to each query. You're not going to see a workstation name for each query, because, again, it's consolidating those queries and showing us the impact overall for that query based on number of occurrences and average performance. And you can scroll to the right here, just like you could before, and see the application it's coming from, the most recent date and time completion as well. And again, you can still open up the query text details if you want to look at the query overall, which is nice. And again, you have the charts here to do some comparative analysis visually based on different performance metrics of duration, CPU reads, writes. Because we're looking at this from a signature mode perspective where it consolidated, then you're not going to see now in the drop down here by user or workstation, because again, 5 occurrences could have been 5 different users or 5 different workstations, but you'll be able still to sort by SQL command, application, or database, as you see here. Now I can take this query, and this one that was higher impact, notice it's red. I'm going to take that query, and I want to see the query history over those 5 occurrences. So I'll right-click and show query history, and it's going to show me the performance. And a lot of them executed at one time here, but you'll be able to see how it executed down here at the bottom in more detail. All of those occurrences at the very bottom. I like this because it's showing us the average CPU, or we can look at average duration, and we can see overall how different changes to the environment have affected or impacted that query execution. And of course, down at the bottom, for any particular date and time where we see a spike up, where there seems to be a repetitive trend, maybe every day at 10 o'clock, this one query jumps up or spikes up for duration. And so we look at that every day at 10 a.m. and we see that, hey, it's the same user, and hey, every day at 10 a.m. they're putting the same parameters. Then we realize that, hey, maybe this is a report that's executing, and based on the parameters they're passing, we're seeing a different impact based on what they're passing to that report or to that query. But down at the bottom, you can see what's more high impact and who it is that's executing that query, given the history here. And if you want to branch it out a little bit further, I just went for the last couple of days, but I could go back to last week if I wanted to, and pick a date on the calendar. With a history browser, we're able to go back in time, whether it's a day, whether it's a week, whether it's a month, whether it's a year. We're able to go back in time and analyze activity, resource utilization, sessions, whatever, from a point in time, if that's what we want to do. Using the history browser, which you can see up here at the top right, you can go back on the calendar to analyze that. But here you see the charts for the history for just that one query, for the duration, or the CPU, or the reads, or the writes, for that matter. So anyway, that is also a benefit to having that query monitor, just to understand anything that might be a repetitive trend or something that seems to be performing poorly on a repetitive basis. That's what that query history will do. Now moving along to the right, again, see at the top here we have signature mode, statement mode, query history, now query weights. Query weights is showing us any trends happening with workload. So when we talk about weights, what it means is that for the query to execute, there has to be a certain level of weighting or weight activity happening for certain resources. Like CX packet weights, we're waiting for CPU, or we're waiting for it to write to the log and things like that. Well, this is showing us that workload or asynchronous network I/O, and you can see right here the trend in weight activity with different weight categories. Or you can start however you want using these tabs, like looking at weight activity by statements, weight activity by application name, or by database, workstation, sessions, or users. Or if you are in the heat of the battle at this moment and you want to really dig into what's going on right now, then hit the drop down and go to query weights by duration, and it will show you, depending on what tab you select here, the breakdown of workload based on different applications, as you can see here. And so you can pick on the top weight activity, which is 800 milliseconds, or you can go down here to the bottom. Maybe I pick on this very bottom area, and we have backup activity. I want to see what's going on with backup activity, SQL Safe Backup. So I click on that, and it shows us page IO latch activity. So we have latch activity going on, and maybe I drill into that a step further, and we can see through the command what it is that it's executing. As you can see, it's doing a transaction log backup log, the database business processing is showing me where it's backing up. It's showing me the actual command that's executing. And then I can go down a little bit deeper here to MSDB is where it's reading from, or down to where the query is coming from, down to the session, and actually down to the actual user account. And you can start however you want. I picked on the SQL Safe, but I could go into the users and then pick on a particular account. Here we have a little bit of weight activity. This is just, it looks like a lock or other activity. So I'll just click on an account here. And then we have write log activity that's spiked up a little bit. So we click on that. Now we see all of the statements that are associated with that user and write log activity. And then again, we can view the command if we want to, or drill into the command to get down to the application, or down to the database, down to the workstation that activity came from. In this case, it was the server, and then down to the sessions. And of course, that's associated with that one particular user, the admin account. So those are the query monitor aspects of the tool. There's a number of ways to slice and dice query activity, as you can see here, and understand what's going on with the most expensive queries in your environment. I'm going to go to the number 2 item on the list, prescriptive analytics. Now, prescriptive analytics, it's something that if you go into the properties of your instance and go to the analysis configuration, you can schedule this to run on a regular basis every Sunday at 3 a.m. or in this case 12 a.m., however you want to set that. Just set your time, how long you want it to run as well. What this is, as you can see, all these different categories, it's something that will scan an instance. It's going to scan the instance and tell you everything that could potentially be wrong in all of these different categories. If any of you are long-term Diagnostic Manager customers or IDERA customers, you've probably seen SQL Doctor. And what we did is we took that functionality and embedded it in Diagnostic Manager. Not in a modular form. You don't have to go out and download something extra to plug in. It is just built right into Diagnostic Manager. SQL Doctor has been a tool that consultants use. They go on site and they scan a SQL instance or a couple of SQL instances and get a nice report that tells them everything that could potentially be wrong with that SQL instance, and it gives them some food for thought for what might be wrong so they can hit the ground running with diagnosing performance issues in the environment. So from our standpoint, it just made good sense to, offer this functionality to our Diagnostic Manager customers and build it right in. So you can schedule this to run, as you can see here. You can also run it as an alert action. Whenever a certain problem pops up, have it kick off that prescriptive analytics scan. or you can go over to the Analyze tab here at the top and click the Run button and run this manually as well. It's up to you how you approach using this. But here's what you're going to get. I'll just open up one of these reports. So this is one that I've run in the past here recently, and it shows what it discovered as different potential issues. Some of this is like, the way I put it, more matter of fact. It's like these databases haven't had an integrity check performed in many, many days. I try to keep problems in my environment for demo purposes, so I know it looks a little messy here, but I have different databases that haven't had integrity check performed in quite some time. There's a large table that has had a lot of modifications since the last time statistics were updated. Notice at the bottom it will tell you what it discovered, when it's a problem, or why it is not a problem. So you get different schools of thought on this topic as well. It gives us a recommendation for how to approach this issue and fix it. You'll also get little learning links down here at the very bottom. So it's not just us telling you about the problem. We'll link you to other third-party resources and different articles on the web that help explain why this could be a potential issue as well. And just kind of go down the list, you might get index recommendations. As you can see, we have a duplicate index here, and it tells us, again, when it's a problem, why it's not a problem, recommendations. One thing I point out when I show these prescriptive analytic recommendations is that these buttons light up at the top to help give you some additional information. Like here's an optimization script in this case to fix this issue. Now this one's kind of simple. A duplicate index, well, let's remove it, right? So you'll have different types of scripts that get presented to you, but this one is pretty basic. It's just telling us here's a script that you need to execute to remove this duplicate index. You could copy it out down here at the bottom if you want to share this with the rest of your team, or if you are just ready to go ahead and hit the fix it now button, there's a run button at the bottom and it will remove that duplicate index, which of course is leading to additional overhead to keep that index updated. And if you want, you can just hit the export button to export the entire report to Excel and then hand a copy to the rest of the team so that they can go through as part of a team and review which findings make good sense to apply to your environment and those that do not. You can just check them off the list. And some of these findings are also associated with query tuning, as you can see, like no joint predicate has been detected. So while it was scanning, there were queries that were executing, and it identified different queries that executed and those that might be considered higher impact. Of course, the use of a wildcard with a select statement, we're going to return a lot of data, right? Including data that may not even be required. So it's telling us to use explicit includes of columns and not use the wildcard. Here we have a cursor could be optimized for better performance. Again, we have a learning link down here at the bottom and a cursor that it identified on the integration services database that seems to be problematic. So if we click show problem, it will bring up that particular statement and highlight exactly where we need to go to rewrite that query. Usually you'll see yellow highlighting the entire line of the command, and the blue will just be focusing on one particular command to help focus your attention to that area. But in this case, we're looking at a cursor, so it highlighted the entire cursor as something that needs to be optimized based on what the recommendations are. And again, you can export that detail out if you want as well. So keep that in mind, that this prescriptive analytics is something that is available to you. I've noticed that in some of our customer environments, I'll go help them out and look at the Analyze tab, and they don't have any reports. I beg the question, why don't you use prescriptive analytics? Because it gives you that food for thought on what are some of those next steps to, moving forward with addressing some of the issues in your environment that maybe you didn't consider. All right, so going hand in hand with these query tuning recommendations that you see, and with the query monitor that we were just looking at, I want to bring up this little feature. It goes along with what we call SQL Diagnostic Manager Pro. With SQL Diagnostic Manager Pro, you get 2 additional products. So for any of you that are customers on this presentation today, you may not exactly be aware of this, but if you wanted to, you could upgrade your existing license for a very low cost, of course, but that would give you access to Diagnostic Manager Pro, which would include SQL workload analysis and the tool I'm getting ready to show you called SQL Query Tuner. Now, why do I consider this a top 5 feature of Diagnostic Manager? Well, it's because this product actually does tune the queries and shows you the results of making the changes. It's also just a great tool overall for anyone in your environment that is a developer. For example, if I wanted to go over here to the left-hand side, I have my different objects on an instance. And let's say I want to script out AdventureWorks. We all know that little sample database, but I can right-click and select Extract, and it will script it out for me. So then if I wanted to, I could go over to another instance, and it will create that database for me. Or if I wanted to go into a particular stored procedure, like this, take a stored procedure and extract it. Well, it will script that out for me. So I can then go ahead and run that over on another instance and recreate that stored procedure, right? So that's a benefit from a development standpoint. But here's also something that's really slick. I can profile, and when I say profile, I mean via dynamic management views, not trace. But I'm going to take this instance and right-click and go to Profile and connect to the data source connection to that instance. And it's going to start monitoring everything going on this SQL instance, all the queries that are executing on this instance. And notice it's down here in the lower left, you'll see those little green bar showing that it's doing something. Now, this is not a monitoring tool per se. It will run constantly if you want it to, but it displays just 1 hour worth of data. It's not something that's storing data for long-term historically. The data is also stored efficiently in little file format, but it's tracking everything that's going on here with sessions, different wait activities or workload activities, different statements. And this is just a summary overview, but if you want to drill into any one of these categories like statements, then you can click the SQL statements or go to the wait activities or down to sessions and even store procedures that are executing to see the workload associated with any one of them. Let's just let this run for a second because I already ran this earlier. I have this workload here that I gathered from earlier, and it shows the statements, events, and the sessions from previously. You can just go in to any one of these statements and right-click and look at the execution plan if you want to, like this. It shows you every step of the operation and the cost associated with it. Or right-click and select Tune the query. If you're seeing that there was a heavy workload associated with that particular statement, let's say, click the Tune button. And what it's going to do is it's going to switch over to this tab. One thing it's going to do is analyze the indexes, and it's going to show you any indexes that were useful to this statement. You can just mouse over it like this, and it will pop up. As you can see, the pop-up says index used by the database optimizer. Then it shows you indexes that could be used by database optimizer, and of course, any indexes that are completely useless to this statement. There's other statistics here as well, like table statistics, column statistics and histograms, and any plan guides if applicable. It also shows you any indexes suggested to be created, which if you wanted to, you could select those indexes like this, and then right-click and create the indexes on the fly right here. Also, it will, if you go in and select Perform Detailed Analysis and have execution iterations of, one or more, it will go through and rewrite the query a number of different ways with different query hints, and it has, like in this case, 110 different test cases where it rewrote the query, and it's going to show you how it performed after it rewrote the query, executing it each time. And notice it has green, blue, and red for some of these values that came back. Green means that the performance increased by greater than 10%. Blue means it's within the range of plus or minus 10%. Red means it degraded greater than 10%. So of course we're looking for green, obviously. So we'll see the green in these different columns. And like what I'm seeing here as probably the best is this hash join query hint, because the cost significantly was reduced from the original, which is at the very top here. Top is the original performance. The next down is a significant cost decrease, a significant elapsed time decrease for execution, a significant decrease in reads, significant decrease in physical reads, logical reads, and a significant decrease in CPU time. So that seems to make good sense to go with. Let's just see what is the difference between the original query and the hash join query hint. I'll right-click and select Compare to Parent. Let's go ahead and maximize that. So the original query is on the left. The rewritten query is on the right, highlighting in blue where it rewrote. And there's that option hash join. That was really not a significant change in the grand scheme of things, but that little change made all the difference. So maybe I want to test it a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and select that query, copy it, and close this window. Now I can do a couple things. Up here at the top, there's a load test feature of the product, and I can just go ahead and paste it in here, have it simulate a certain number of users for a certain amount of time or a certain number of executions with a fixed time delay between each iteration of execution, or a random time interval delay between each execution, either way. And then you just hit the little execute here and it will do the load test. Now while it's doing the load test, remember, we're still doing the profiling in the background. So you're able to come back over here and see what the impact has been while it's doing the profile of all activity. And we'll come back to that in just a second. And I'll show you how that works. I can also go up here to the top and select just one execution iteration and choose the database like this and paste the query in and execute it one time. So I hit the execute button, so it just executed one time. And you know, I took that one rewritten query, but if I wanted to, I could go back and grab any of those rewritten queries that I was, you know, thinking about maybe rewriting the query a certain way, because they all had different results, right? If we go back over here, you see there are different costs, different elapsed times. Maybe I want a better elapsed time in this case. So instead, I go over here to the merge join query. I could go ahead and compare it to the original query, copy out the rewritten query if I want, and then, you know, execute that as well. Point is, you execute a couple of times, then you want to go back and do some comparative analysis. I only executed the one time, but we'll go over here to where it's still profiling. We're going to filter by application. And remember, the name of this tool is called SQL Query Tuner. So go to IDERA SQL Query Tuner, and we'll refresh. We're able to see just the results of that one execution that I executed. And at the end of the day, when we're done profiling, I can just hit the stop button, and then it goes silent. It's not doing anything else with watching what's going on in the environment. But with this, you're able to see the workload. By the way, you can also highlight on these charts and zoom in on something that stands out like that and focus on just the queries or the workload or the users and sessions for just that little time slice if that's what you want to do. Anyway, that's the Query Tuner. Just a couple more items here. I know we're pushing our time. And the next item on the agenda was the alert actions. This one's going to be pretty quick. It's just something I like to point out because I've noticed when new customers start using Diagnostic Manager, a lot of times they don't really go in and set up alert actions. But I think that's kind of relevant because if you're not paying attention, you know, to what's going on in your environment, then something pops up as a problem, then you're not able to quickly respond to that problem in a timely manner. So I think that alert actions are great for helping you understand that there's something happening, and also to set up automation, mitigation, and resolution type activities. So we're going to go up here to the top right. See this little tools menu? Hit the drop down. There's different management features here, including your grooming options, for example, or alert configuration templates. But we're going to go to this, alert actions and responses. And these are all the different action providers that we provide our customers. There's all kinds of different options. Send emails. Notice there's enable prescriptive analytic, like kick off a scan from prescriptive analysis, which we were looking at a second ago, and have it scan for a period of time, all those categories from the time that a problem was happening. Or enable query data collection from Query Monitor or query weight statistic collection. Some of your instances you may not be interested in gathering query data or weight statistic collection data all the time. It's not something that is going to be invasive to your SQL instance. However, that data does get stored in the repository. Maybe you just don't need it for like a dev or test instance, but you can have it enabled here as an alert action to turn on for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and collect that data, or write data to the application event log, or send SMP traps to other third-party systems, or kick off PowerShell commands or programs, or integrate data with System Center Operations Manager with Microsoft SCOM, or integrate with ServiceNow, or kick off SQL jobs or SQL scripts. There's a lot of different options. By the way, they can be configured right here as well. Just open them up and you click on them and open them up, and you can configure them right here. Once they are configured and enabled, go to the alert responses, open a rule, give it a friendly name, and just like Outlook automation, good old Outlook automation, we just go to the conditions and set the conditions, and those conditions can be based on alerts happening on certain SQL instances or groupings of instances. We have a thing called tags where we can create groups of instances based on logical names of location, region, department, team, allocated resources, hosted applications, however you want to create these tags in your own environment. So you can have it applicable to certain instances and certain groups, so to speak, or based on alert activities happening based on certain metrics, or multiple metrics having a threshold condition met at the same time, or where the metric severity goes to a warning state. Perform these actions one time. And even if it stays in a warning condition for 20 iterations, we're only going to perform this action one time. If it goes to critical, we perform it one time for critical, just when metric severity changes, instead of kicking off these alerts every single time or kicking off these notifications every single time we poll and see that that problem is still persistent. Or where refresh happens with certain days of the week, certain times of the day, or based on alert ranking. With our threshold or metrics and thresholds, we can set different priorities for different metrics, and so basically alert for anything that's greater than a certain rank. And of course, where metric severity is unchanged for a period of time, which speaks to escalation, where you have an alert condition lasts for a certain period of time, then send a new email to someone else other than, let's say, the Network Operations Center people, because they haven't addressed the issue, just to make someone aware that, hey, we have a problem over here. The second window is where we add in any of those actions that I just named off a second ago, and then we can customize them. For example, running a SQL script. I created this script myself, where basically I embedded some of the alert data into my SQL script, in this case the alert summary text, for blocking wait time alert, and that alert summary includes the session ID. So I take the session ID and I validate the program, the database, and the login. And if it matches whatever the parameters are that I put here at the top, most of these are wildcards except for the program, then I run a kill command against it. The reason I emphasize that is that these alert actions are very customizable. For example, in my email, I've embedded those same types of parameters in my email message. So when I get an email, or in this case, my distribution list gets the email, they're going to be armed with the right information they need to move forward. They might be out to lunch or on vacation or in a meeting, but when they get this email, they know what they're dealing with right away just from the email, without having to go open up the console to see what's going on, based on the fact that I've embedded these types of parameters right in the email. And of course, there's that prescriptive analytics if we wanted to kick that off whenever an alert condition exists. So keep this alert action response configuration detail in mind when you start using the product, because this will help you with not just being notified, but setting up different automation responses around different problems that exist in your environment as well. And just two more things and we'll wrap it up. I know we're pushing our time, but I want to show you the reports. The historical reporting. This is taking the data that we're gathering from this product. A lot of this is diagnostic data, and you kind of have to drill through the console to look at different types of data. But through the reports, you can go in and deploy these reports to reporting services and set up subscriptions to run on a regular basis to send you different reports that you need to see. And you can see all the different reports here that you can select from. Or if you want, you have the ability also just to run the reports right from within the console without reporting services. Reporting services is not a requirement, but we do have that deployed reports in case you want to push them out and have the ability to share different report data with different audiences or through subscription emails or posting reports to a file share for that matter. But we can go in here and we have these three areas: monitor, analyze, and plan. Monitor is more the real-time reporting. Like first thing in the morning, I want to run this enterprise summary report, and it will show me the current status of my SQL instances. Green, yellow, red status. I can just see kind of across the board where I might have some problems and a little bit of the performance overview details, or I might go into the analyze section, which is more of the historical data, like showing me the worst performing servers over time, the worst performing queries over time, the alert history over time, top tables by growth and fragmentation over time, resource utilization over time, CPU, memory, and disk activity, top databases over time. And for the sake of time, I'll just run one report here, but you can select top databases, for example. And we'll choose an instance and maybe a time period. And I want to see the top 5 databases. You can select top 10, top 30, top 50, top 200. It doesn't matter. And we'll run the report. And it'll show us a nice little category style report showing us top databases by overall data size. Notice it shows us top databases by data size, sorting by that column. And it also shows us other statistics like log file size, percent growth, bytes read per second, written per second, transactions per second, top databases by overall growth for the last 7 days, top databases by reads per second, top databases by writes per second, transactions per second, query weights. And if anything stands out, what I like about these reports is that they are interactive. I can select one of these databases and it will drill down into just that one database. I selected the transaction per second category, so it took me to the database statistics report. Now I'll plug that one database in and selected the chart type of transactions per second. And now down at the bottom I can see for the last 7 days what the transactions per second looks like. Going back to what I was showing you a second ago on the real-time enterprise summary report, same thing. I can interact with these reports. If one of these instances looks critical, I can click on the critical nature of that instance, and it will take me to yet another report showing me all the active alerts that are causing that instance to be critical. Right? And so I can also export this out to Excel, PDF, or Word to share with the rest of the team. Or if I want to drill into that instance to look at the server summary so far today, click on the instance name and it takes us to the server summary, show me the version, the edition, and so far today, I actually start at 6 a.m., so I'll make that a little bit longer. And we'll be able to see the response time so far today, CPU activity today, OS memory usage, disk busy activity, and database status. So there's a whole variety of different reports, and you can create your own custom reports as well. And one thing that I find is a benefit of this product is the custom counter feature. When you go to administration section, you can go in and add your own perfmon counters, WMI counters, SQL Server counters, SQL scripts, Hyper-V or VMware metrics, or Azure system counters. And so any of those that you add, you basically add them in and decide what the thresholds should be, whether higher values are worse than lower values or vice versa. And so those counters you can also plug into your own custom reports as well. Just something to consider since we're talking about the reports. The last thing I'm going to show you as a benefit of this product, I know we're pushing our time here, is the web interface. So let's go ahead and pull this up. This is something that we recently added a couple of versions back. We wanted to create a more streamlined, lightweight interface, and we are moving the direction of having parallel functionality within the web interface that correlates to what functionality you have in the .NET client, but it's just not there yet. But for anyone that just needs to see high-level resource utilization, for example, and perhaps some of the alerts and session activity, maybe for like developers, let's say. What we will do is go in like this, and notice you can even sort by those tag groupings if you want to. It'll show you the breakdown of instances by different groupings. Either way, however you want to approach it. But we'll click an instance right from here, and it will drill into that instance and show us the resource utilization currently. Or you can choose different date ranges and time periods if you want to, and scroll down the list to look at other resources. If you want, you can add other charts, including, like I said, those custom counters. And you can see some of your custom counters that have been added as well. And go up to the top here, and you're able to see all the alerts on the SQL instance. And click on any particular alert that stands out, and it shows you the details of that particular alert. Snooze the alert if you want. View the server dashboard again if you want to. Or go into the session activity. And here you have all the active, sleeping, and suspended sessions currently, or you can choose different time periods as well. And if you click on one of these sessions, it'll bring up the details of the user, database, application, the last command executed, login time, last activity, date and time stamp, physical I/O, CPU, tempdb usage. So keep in mind that this web interface is there. We recently added this. We wanted it to be a very lightweight type of a web interface, and we are moving the direction again of giving it new features and functionality that correlate with what you get in the .NET console. It's not there yet. It is secure, fully authenticated. It is a read-only view, and you do get a lot of the popular types of data that most DBAs or developers like to see immediately when they're going in to diagnose performance problems. And you're able to do that through your own browser. That was my bonus item, by the way. That's actually 6 items that we've covered today.
So with that, if you have not downloaded SQL Diagnostic Manager, feel free to go out to www.idera.com, and there is a products section where you will see the IDERA SQL Diagnostic Manager for SQL Server listed as a product that you can download and perform a free trial. When you download the trial software, it comes with a license key already embedded in the software, which supports up to 15 instances and for 14 days. And if you need a little more time than that, feel free to reach out to us and we can get you a little bit of an extension on that license key as well. Also, if you have any questions that come up as you're looking through these top 5 features and you need some additional Q&A around some of those features, we can set up a more one-on-one type formalized discussion as well. I hope this video has been helpful, and look forward to new videos coming out in the near future as well. Thank you.